Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching AM Live, coming to you from the studios of New Frontiers Television. On Sunday, May 7th, President Muhammadu Buhari took a vacation, a medical vacation, to the United Kingdom to check on his health. And while he did that, he wrote a letter to the National Assembly instructing that the Vice President should coordinate the activities of the government. This has generated lots of issues among citizens in Nigeria. This has raised lots of anxieties, which has raised lots of issues happening in the presidency as it is, which is why today we will be talking about the state of the nation as it affects the presidency. And with me in the studio is Mr. Ademola Adeshola, who is a public analyst, and of course he's been a regular face on AM Live. You're welcome to the studios.
My pleasure once again to be invited here.
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the whole coordinating, okay, not coordinating affairs as it is, but the letter of President Muhammadu Buhari that states that the president should coordinate the affairs of the nation as opposed to just handing over to him as the acting president. This is not the first time President Muhammadu Buhari is going on leave, and on several occasions he has handed over as the acting president. He has handed over to Osibajo, but this time around he did put that the vice president, as it is, should coordinate national affairs. What does that mean to you?
Well, if the politics is playing out in Nigeria, as peculiarly as we know the country, you can never be too sure of what you get, because it's going to be a case of the more you look, the less you see. And the Nigerian politician has a propensity for contradiction and needless confusion. First, President Buhari, in the history of the country, we would say, has done what any, constitution compliant leader should do, which was when he was going out, he transmitted a letter to the National Assembly as required by the law that the VP should, of course, take over in acting capacity, which was a very good thing to do. But as good as that is, we must also note that he has not done anybody a favor. He has only adhered to constitutional requirement. But come to the recent one, you would never think that it was the same man who had transmitted letter to the National Assembly asking that, as constitutionally required, that his VP should should take charge in acting capacity, would have been the one to write such kind of letter with such needless and confusing word called coordinating. Indeed, the word coordinating is in the Constitution, but not in that aspect of it. It has to talk about when, let us not even go there, because it's not even something related to this. And I learned from some sources that the president actually did not read that letter before he appended his signature. And that tells you a lot about the what we run the country. So to, of course, summarize, it was something whoever wrote that letter did in bad faith. It's a reflection of the ruinous and self-serving politics that is playing out in the presidency as a very, very divided, arm of government. Okay.
Well, the issue of the 2017 budget has been ongoing for a while. Just earlier this month, the 2016 fiscal year ended, and people were expecting that the 2017 budget would kickstart as soon as possible. But while the budget was passed by the National Assembly on May 11th, it didn't get to the presidency until May 17th. And up till as we speak now, the presidency hasn't assented to the bill, to the budget as it is, due to some controversies again rising from the 2017 budget. Let me quickly take some of the controversies. In an interview, Senator Itaenanga, who coordinates the budget affairs for the presidency, the senator in charge of budget affairs for the presidency, did say that the budget will be sent to the president, after which he would pass it to the acting president, which is President
Acting President
Yemi Osibajo. Although he did come up to say he was misquoted, and that was not what he actually meant. But again, if he was actually misquoted, well, that is left for those of us who heard what he said and the way we did interpret it. Lai Mohammed, the Minister for Information, and Culture also said that the presidency has not decided who should assent to the budget. What do you make of all of these controversies?
Well, as I have just entered a while ago, here is one confused presidency. And that word is advisedly used because it is not me or any other Nigerian who is responsible for the confusion and disorganization that you find going on in the presidency. In fact, in all fairness, it is one presidency in which the falcon doesn't hear the falconer. And that's, of course, easy to understand. The arrowhead of that body or institution is struggling to also keep fit.
Yeah.
And that allows for all kinds of politics, all kinds of scheming, all kinds of shenanigans going on in that place. So everybody wants to be their own masters. Everybody wants to, of course, take as much as they can take. Everybody wants to be the one in charge. Everybody wants to call the shot. And that's what we find. Otherwise, I do not see what the problem is. Once you have said there is somebody who, by saying he is acting, it simply means he can discharge the functions of the office of the president. So if that be the case, if there is a bill to be assented to, I do not, believe me, see why that should not be done. But because, of course, this is Nigeria, and one of the things that you find going there is needless confusion. When people are too self-centered, when people are too egoistic, and they want to do everything but obey the Constitution, this is what you get. So it's a storm in a teacup. And I mean in terms of the noise about who should assent, who cannot assent. The man you mentioned, Senator Enang, who is the go-between between the presidency and the National Assembly, is, of course, saying the right thing. So if he does a 360-degree vote phase and says, look, he was misquoted, again, understand that as part of the needless confusion that thrives in that institution of government. So what I would, of course, as a Nigerian, watching what is playing out, advise is that the presidency needs to do some soul searching. It has to do some sitting back and reorganization. Because I tell you, even when we do not have to have had that, with the little things, well, a few things that have played out, we got to know that not many of those people, especially the northern interests, are interested in a vice president or Shibajo, being in charge. But look, that's not a thing that, whether you like it or not, is constitutional. And it has got to play out as it should. So I would advise that the acting president should, of course, thoroughly vet what has been sent to them. And if they are okay, he should go ahead and assent to it. He is discharging the functions of the office of the president in acting capacity.
Okay, as it is, the law gives the acting president the room of 30 days to go through the budget before he assents to it. But considering that the nation is hanging as it is in, concerning the economy as it looks now, if this 2017 fiscal year doesn't begin, the country can as much say that we are running on a no budget level. What do you expect the presidency to do?
Let's be more critical. Let's remove the glove and call a spade a spade. Okay. Look, when the budget was signed earlier than this, the question we should ask, what impact did it have on the struggling masses of this country? I have come to observe something, and if you watch it, since the time of President Jonathan, if I am not mistaken, if not Yaradua, but I think, President Jonathan. I noticed that we started operating this trillion-thing budget. Yeah. And the more the budget increases, the more the misery of Nigerians towers. And that's what we find. Because I would imagine that the essence of a budget, amongst all other things, will also be to address the condition of the people in terms of making available public facilities, public infrastructure. But look around. Since the beginning of this Fourth Republic in 1999, up to date, the increases you have recorded in budget have not amounted to anything inspiring or anything productive, transformative for the Nigerian people. And that's a sad situation. But again, maybe we should take a step at a time. And what is that? I'm saying, let us even begin to see how we can address the delay in budgets making an implementation. Or rather passing into law. Because it's very important that we get that right. That we do not get it right only signals to one thing, and that is the fact that this is not a country whose leading elites are coordinated. Because if much thinking goes into what you do, nobody needs to tell you that when you are starting a fiscal year, you need to take off with something. So I would imagine that somebody would, of course, do what is right and then make sure that these things come in on time, the National Assembly work on time, and it moves on. Don't forget again, the delay that you always observe, including the president, has nothing to do with thorough vetting, has nothing to do with serious critical examination of what it is there. It is just basically sheer incompetence, self-serving mindedness, and some needless display of ego. And that's what you find. So, in my view, let it be that they sign the budget into law today. You may think it's pessimism, but the truth is, what is the effect on the toiling masses of this country? So that if you look at the big chunks of the budget, it always go to the Napoleons that we are already pampering and then profusely taken care of in the system.
Well, maybe in defense of the government, maybe I should say that when the budget was being passed by the National Assembly, the increment of the budget, we do realize that the budget has increased over 100 billion naira. And when asked, the National Assembly did say that it is to ensure that the country get out of recession and to ensure that everybody, every man on the streets gets and feel the impact of the budget. And the budget also has been tagged as a budget of recovery and growth. So shouldn't we be expecting a change?
You would also agree with me that the road to hell is paved with good intention. If the National Assembly, in fact, as fine as that sounds on the surface, if you go below it, you will discover that you ask yourself the question, who is talking? The National Assembly. That same institution that has forever seen to its own affairs at the detriment of a larger percentage of Nigerians, is it the one that is now coming up to, you know, the history of that institution and what it does with the budget last year particularly. I would also tell you that the naming of the budget is not the most important thing. And if you would not consider it to be critical, I would argue that what you tag the budget of growth and whatever is also a misnaming. Because look, the truth is that if indeed that is what it is going to do, I do not think mid-May or ending May, we still don't have a budget, even when you extended the lifespan of the one that has just officially ended. So, for me, I am saying that if the Nigerian politician comes up to say he has increased the budget, be sure that the bigger, percentage of that increase will still go to the fat cats of power that we are taking care of in this country. So, let us be more serious and truthful about our situation, because when you sidestep reality, it helps you to stay long in illusion. And the truth of the matter is that we do not yet have institutions of government who program what they do with the expectation that they can genuinely affect positively the lives of those they pretend to govern.
Okay, well, still on the budget, before we leave the 2017 budget, Femi Falano, a senior advocate of Nigeria, said over the weekend that the president, that's the acting president, should not assent to the budget because the National Assembly has no legal rights to increase the budget away from the initial amount. Do you see the presidency delaying the budget because of these increments, or doing a proper vetting of it as it is?
Well, I respect the position of the legal, luminary there, that the man should not, the acting president should not assent to the bill because of the increase the National Assembly has, of course, effected. Well, if you go and read that part of the Constitution which talks about budgeting, it is the Ministry of Finance, in coordination with, I think, Budget Office and then the Presidency, who can call for, proposals for what will form your budget, the bill. And once they do that, they take it to the National Assembly. The duty of that body in respect to the budget is to see that these things are done in an appropriate way. But I guess also somewhere in the clause says that if they do observe, I'm not too I'm not being precise now, but that's
Okay.
exactly what I cannot remember as of this moment. But I have read something like that that says that they can, of course, ensure some, increase in a way. But look, let's not miss the point. The important thing with this increase has been done. It will not be the first time. They did it last year. They did it the year before. What we need to do now is for those who will be looking at it finally before the assent is to say, is the increase justified?
Okay.
If it is justified, why not? Go on.
Okay. Well, also there are lots of issues plaguing the presidency, but again, part of it is that the acting president, as it is, was expected to present a report to the president on the investigation of the SGF, that's Babashe Lawal, and the DG of NIA, the National Intelligence Office, that's Femi Oke.
Yeah.
They were supposed to present a result to President Muhammadu Buhari, but on the Monday, they were supposed to present it on May 8th, which was the day the president left the country, the shores of the country. Nigerians are calling for that report. What are you expecting in the, and again, just today, it was in the news that the acting president said Nigeria has to be patient because he was the one who led that team, and the report is available, but he can't, as it is, he can't present it to the president due to the absence of the president.
It's in Nigeria that I know you can build or construct a bound foundation and expect to build a massive state-of-the-art structure on it, and you'll be thinking it will stand. Or it is in this country I know that people like to think it is logically possible to climb a tree from the top. It's not going to happen. Okay. How do I mean? The setting up of the committee that investigated these two persons we are talking about is even a wrong move. If what we have alleged is some constitutional infraction bordering on theft, bordering on misappropriation of funds. Look, to organize or put in place a committee at the level like that, it's not the thing to do. The thing to do, basically, is to allow the same process that has been taking place for other people outside of that institution to also take effect. And don't also forget that we are not even talking about anything entirely new except the OK matter. In the case of the suspended SGF, you recall that once the National Assembly, the committee in the National Assembly, the Senate that came up with a report indicting him, did that and submitted it to President Buhari, I thought Nigerians should have noted what the decision of the president was on that matter. What did he do? He called to the office of the Attorney General to look into the matter. And when the report came back, he told us that, look, Babashe Lawal was not given a fair hearing. And that the people who even signed the thing didn't form quorum. In other words, you were leaving the substance of that matter and paying attention to the relevance of that matter. And in that sense, he decided that there was no case. But to show you that indeed, that was a narrative, and of course, his mindset about this matter. Just when the suspension of Babashe Lawal was announced, and journalists were engaging him, you recall his famous response, that have you heard, the question was put, that the presidency has suspended you? He then fired back. Who is the presidency? Okay, so that is the statement of a man who knows and understands that his main principle, the one at whose pleasure he served, didn't buy into something talking about investigating him. In fact, I don't know how true this rumor or a piece of information is, that it was even at the instance of the vice president that this man was suspended. So, and I do not have much doubt about that, because as at the time this thing was playing out, we had a president who was not fully with us, even when he was in Aso Rock. So, based on his health challenges. So the point is that it is a wrong move. And I won't be surprised. I am one Nigerian who will not be poll-arched at all if at the end of the day, this man is given a clean bill of health, or a soft landing by which they say, okay, you can't come back, but just go away with your loot. Okay,
talking about most especially the case of the SGF, the National Assembly has submitted its report indicting the SGF because he has been called. If we're saying he wasn't given fair hearing, it's been called to the National Assembly, but he didn't show up. if peradventure the outcome of that report ends up conflicting, the report of the presidency ends up conflicting with that of the National Assembly, are we not going to see a showdown as it is, considering that the National Assembly and the presidency seems to be having lots of issues?
Let's face one fact about this presidency, especially under President Muhammadu Buhari. This is one presidency that from day one, you would notice that it favors what I call double morality. In other words, what is sourced for the goose, in its own case, is not sourced for the gander. Time will not permit us to take a trip back into the history of it, almost 2 years, with respect to how it has demonstrated quite abundantly this principle of dissonance in terms of morality. And then what do you find? You find a situation where some of the persons, it's not the first time that key figures in that government have been accused of certain things. For example, you know how they treat the case of the chief of army staff, Buratai, and his, mansions in Dubai. What any rational mind knows that no matter, if you take an account of how long he's been working, what he has been earning, and what have you, he could not have amassed those, buildings, or rather have them. But what do we have? A clean bill of health was given, and many other cases like that. Look, their heavens will not fall if the report of the presidency, which investigated this, of the committee that investigated this person, turns out to be different from what that of the Senate says. Heaven will not fall for one reason. In their numbers, many Nigerians think this government is infallible. Many Nigerians are docile. Many Nigerians have everything but the criticalness of mind that every citizen of a democratic country should have. Because you can't trust anybody entirely when it comes to power. That is why there are rules and checks in places, because human nature would certainly at some point want to take charge. But if you think some people are infallible, and to that end you sit back and allow them to do what they do, what you get is what we are getting at this moment. This government has not been thoroughly engaged. There are very many junctures of failures that it has taken us to, and nobody except the familiar few voices who have been saying, look, you can't just go on like this. For example, you mentioned it a while ago, which is the economic policies of this country, of this administration. I had contended elsewhere at the beginning of this administration and up to the point of this time last year that this administration has no economic blueprint, and nobody can discuss this. I mean, whatever it calls blueprint is just something it can get up with on impulse. It's not something planned. In fact, the truth of the matter is that the APC administration, like President Buhari, the APC party, like President Buhari, came into office without any sound preparation. In fact, worse off, President Buhari wanted just power and not, of course, what the end to which power should be put to. Otherwise, the herdsmen issue, which had been with you for how many years before you even thought of coming to office, what was your blueprint with it? And many other things. Although, let us cut them some slack and say, in the area of security, they have been able to stem the tide, in some way. But again, like they do, they have given themselves pass mark and say, we have defeated Boko Haram, we have trounced them, we have made them taken them out of business. But the truth of the matter is that you were not measured, you were not, humble in your assessment of what you have achieved. And so you went to town exaggerating your achievements.
Okay, well, again, of course, there are lots of issues plaguing the presidency, and the Nigerians are making assessments. On May 29, the administration will be 2 years, and the Nigerians are making, they are already making their assessments, and we will also be making the assessments. But away from that, in the past few weeks, since the president left the country, there has been lots of calls from the various quarters that the vacation of the president is leaving lots of loopholes in the presidency, even though we say that we have an acting president. But it seems like our power has not been fully handed over to the acting president, considering again that 2 ministers were supposed to be sworn in on May 17 at the Federal Executive Council meeting. That's Stephen Ocheni and Suleiman Hassan, to replace the
one from Kogi.
the Federal Executive Council held without the swearing in of these two ministers who have been cleared by the National Assembly. Yeah. And of course, what Nigerians were expecting is swearing in. How would you gauge all of this?
Look, I have got to a point when I'm no longer shocked about the anomalies that only the Nigerian presidency can, of course, perform. Let me, disaggregate this issue and speak to two things. One, when the president's health challenges began to become a serious matter, I recall that I wrote in an op-ed piece, an opinion piece, published in one of the national dailies, that now is the time for the president to take the road not taken. And what is that road not taken? Put in your resignation. And why did I call for that? It's very simple. The truth of the matter is that if you look at the presidency, it is not a place to go and play. Anybody who is going there has got to be mentally powerful, has got to be physically robust. I mean, has to have robust physical health because of the volume of work that you have to do there. Hence, if your health is not strong enough, it is a major disqualification. As of this point, which is why I dislike those who began to say or speculate or even authoritatively push out the information that the president is dead, this and that. They spoil that discussion. They destroy that conversation. The conversation we should be having, just as we should be having now, is that let us come to the brass track. Is the president fit to discharge the duties of his office? Yeah, people say he means well for the country. Oh, bless him. Good for him. We thank him. But we cannot be tethered to his own personal challenges. We are human beings. I personally feel strongly for him. The best of us is what we are. The moment we are gripped by one ailment or illness, I mean, you want to see the worst of us as human beings. But it's unfortunate that the man is being hobbled by his health challenges. But the thing to do at this point, if indeed the integrity thing they pin on his chest and the so many positive values and virtues they, of course, ascribe to him, if they are not fake, if they are true, I would imagine a president who would have come, because the truth is, whether you leave or you yield up the ghost, this country will move on in spite of you. So why would you, to think that if you then go, the whole thing about the anti-corruption war, which is not even properly coordinated, we must note that, will then crash. That's not true. That's not true. And that's why we are saying, rather than build the war against corruption on one person, why not have strong, viable, virile institutions that, in spite of who is in office, the institutions will work. The institutions will take charge. People running it cannot do otherwise. Or unless you do that, you forever be, needlessly afraid that once this man is taken out of the picture, then we are back. Already, who says that? Who would ever imagine that within the same presidency that is very, very strong outwardly on its anti-corruption fight, is also the one that you have many persons being now, investigated and all that. You would never believe that. Who would ever believe that at this point in our drive against anti-corruption, such institutions of government, agencies of government like the customs, like the police, and the army, and a couple of other persons will still be very much neck deep in their cesspit of corruption, which is what you find. All you need to do is to travel. All you need to do is to get across to these people. You see them, it is business as usual. No, they are not aware that there is one anti-corruption czar out there fighting. No. And if you don't get to that, you are not going to do anything. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the truth is that the man is lucky again that you have in the vice president an able ally. But do you know what happened? The vice president, given the way we run our country, cannot move very fast for a simple reason. Something happened the last time the president was away for about 59 days. We saw in the texture and tenor of governance some meaningful difference. No, he didn't take us to heaven. No, he didn't transform our conditions immediately. But we saw promises. We saw moves that indicated that if this man were allowed to take charge fully, we will be getting somewhere. But no. Another time, it took the presidency itself to begin to come and say, no, this man is not doing anything different. It's the same thing that this man should have been doing and all that. Yeah, you could say that. But the truth is, Mr. Vice President, acting president, would not want to be seen as outshining his boss. And finally, look at the Executive Council. It is one gathering that always intrigues me any day, anytime. For what reason? That is one council that, in spite of the one or two few brilliant minds that you have there, there's no spark. What they do there is to study the body language of the president. Nobody disagrees with him. And when you run an organization where people don't disagree healthily, where people don't challenge positions and mean it for the purpose of progress, there cannot be progress. That Federal Executive Council is the brain box of this country. And so if you now find yes men and women, people, that place peopled by yes men and women only, it is what the president say, no disagreement, no challenges, no critical positions on issues. You are not going to, it will be a miracle to expect that the country, under the supervision of these men, will move forward. It will not move forward. That disagreement, especially in a democracy, is important for the advancement of the country. Otherwise, one of the things that Executive Council ought to have been thinking of doing now, if only to put at rest the whole anxiety that you're talking about in the country as a result of the health of the president, it is that it should invoke that section of the Constitution that says it can ensure that there must be a medical panel set up to establish whether the president is physically fit or not.
Okay, one again, a major controversy that the issue of the health of the president has been raising is the coup rumor that's been ongoing for a while. During the first leave that the president took, there was a rumor of the coup. Our minds were laid at rest at the end of the day, and nothing happened as it is. But recently, just last week, the Chief of Army Staff, Buratai, came up with a statement to say that they've caught wind of consultations between politicians and military men, and he was actually warning the military to desist from politics. It's a no-go area for military. And what danger is this rumor of coup posing to our democracy?
Well, the Nigerian state is still in a state of flux. It is susceptible to any form of unhealthy interventions. And we see that increasingly. Take the army that you're talking about. Any democracy that doesn't pretend to be otherwise, but a functional democracy, always ensures that it limits the interventions of the military in its civilian affairs. But what do you have? The next time we want to conduct any election, who are the security men? Soldiers. If you are traveling between here now and Ondo State, you are likely to come across 4, 5 or more checkpoints put or manned by soldiers. If you follow the news very well recently, you discover that we have had cases of many civilians brutalized by soldiers, and many more things like that. When you do not limit, or rather a democracy where the military, the soldiers, play quite active role in its internal affairs, as we see them play here, you cannot put anything past them. It can happen. And as we are, on the surface of things, we might say we have an acting president. But the truth of the matter is that what room does he have to operate? And so some persons think that that will be the best way to correct, because again, all of the interventions by the military we have had in our polity have always been premised on the fact that they wanted to do some corrective measures, which, as we are now better informed today, has been a ruse. It's a lie. There's no corrective measure. In fact, the intervention of military in Nigerian politics, we are still not yet recovered. One significant damage it has done to our polities, or rather polity, is the question of this strange system called federalism that it has given to us. Don't forget that in 1966, when Agui Rosin took office, after the first, coup or thereabout, what do you have? You have a situation where one man came up in spite of the fact of the structural reality that's, of course, works for a federal system, what do you find? You find that man decreeing a unitary system of government. And up till as we speak, the federating units, being the states and the local government, are at the mercy of the center, which should be the other way around. So what you have is that Nigerians are federating in freedom, and that is not what you call federalism. And so yeah, it's a negative impact of the military. If you look at a couple of other things like that, even our democracy, it is still military inclined in the sense of the way we run it. It's a big man system. It is one system that obeys only the orders of individuals and not the constitutions. The constitution, which is the ground norm by which we should be operating. So for me, I would imagine that anybody calling or planning or envisaging that what can correct the ongoing mess is the intervention of the military is but speaking rubbish, because the military has not prospered us in a very interesting way since they have been coursing into the body politic of Nigeria.
The army has employed some measures to make sure that this alleged coup does not take place by doing a redeployment of top officers and trying to meet with or every military organizations just to talk to their leaders and ensure that there's sanity amidst the military. But what would you expect that the presidency do to ensure that the minds of Nigerians are put at rest? Because actually on the streets, people are agitated. So
you see, sometimes when we discuss Nigeria, it always appears as if we need something different from the normal brains that people use elsewhere to be able to pilot our affairs. And when you come to think of it, the issues that we are having, they are just what we compound by lack of critical interventions, critical thinking, critical thought. And that's what we have. You know, any Nigerian who is keenly following events in this country should know that the presidency, that we are where we are today and still going on in one body, is a miracle of its own. Why? Because once the head of any entity, of any formation, of any organization is in disarray, what do you expect of the body? We are having a presidency that is very, very divided. And come to think of it, no thanks also to the politics of the man who heads the organization. Talking about President Buhari, President Buhari is a very, very thoroughgoing, divisive figure. There are many things he has done. Well, take for example, the first time and it shocks me that there is one president who never, and has not understood that elections are over, and when elections are over, you are the president of both those who voted for you and those who did not, because that is democracy. So, just when the president got voted in and his first trip to the US, we know that famous statement which he said that he knew the people who voted for him, and when he was going to do anything, he was going to look in the. As we speak now, people from the South and the Southeast, they are already at the jugular of the Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amici, saying that why did you bypass us in this rail project thing that you are doing? I would not understand that differently, but in line with what the president is doing. If you see his kitchen cabinet, you formed a kitchen cabinet that does not reflect the plurality of the country. And then what kind of president do you want to be? A narrow-minded president. A provincial president, like President Yaradua. Because these are very provincial people, like Jonathan, very provincial. They only know about where they come from. Their mind is not broadened. Their mind does not agree to the ethos of plurality, of tolerance, of multiplicity of voices, which should define what a democracy is. So, if the presidency tomorrow morning gets its act together and puts its house in order, it will reflect in the way the country is moving. But as they are, I tell you, there is nothing to assure except if the Nigerian on the street want to have cold comfort. There is nothing to assure them that these guys are in full charge of what is playing out. Take the economy, and they tell you at some point that they are going to, of course, drive us out of recession at some point. Those are just mere feel-good statements. Why? By their operations, we now come to know that what they are relying on is just if you notice any improvement in the economy today, it is not as a result of the conscious effort of those people to stem the tide of that recession. It is just that some natural thing correcting, of course, happening in spite of their own incompetence and lack of course, good action.
Thank you very much for being on the show, Mr. Ademola Adeshola.
I am very happy to be here.
It's been an interesting conversation on the state of the nation in Nigeria as it affects the presidency. And of course, we know that there are lots of issues that we cannot exhaust on today's show concerning the issues in the presidency and also coupled with the administration of the Buhari-led administration that will be clocking 2 years. On May 29, the conversation will be ongoing on Nigeria and the state of democracy on New Frontiers Television. My name is Adiola Adegoke. Do have a lovely day.